Yes, that President Muhammadu Buhari has been steering the ship of the nation. There have been diverse developmental strides recorded in various sectors.
Now, apart from the core objectives of the administration, which include anti-corruption, the war against insurgency, and revamping the economy, the administration has also made significant inroads into other sectors such as the environment.
Quite right, Kingsley. The last 5 years has witnessed a lot in the environmental sector, one of which is a popular Ogoni cleanup in the Niger Delta region that is ongoing, and other climate change issues.
You're right, Jumai. Now, the administration also recorded breakthroughs in the restoration of some degraded sites, and as well as increasing the nation's vegetation cover, conservation of biodiversity, as well as creation of environmental awareness, plus enforcement of environmental legislation.
And Kingsley, one major area that witnessed improvement in the period under review is the prevention of flood and management of coastal shorelines.
And of recent, the Ministry of Environment, that's the Federal Ministry of Environment, has been engaged in the fight against COVID-19 with the fumigation and disinfection, bordering, of course, on the decontamination of various structures and sites that could encourage the spread of coronavirus in the country.
Well, Kingsley, there are more achievements to be rolled out as the Minister in charge of Environment joins us to review the activities of the sector in the last 5 years. And so we shall ask questions like, what is the stage of implementation of the national policy on erosion and flood control in Nigeria?
And other questions, of course, will involve the level of implementation of the climate change agreements, and what also is the level of work on Ogoni cleanup, and what is the response of other tiers of government in the management of the environment in the country, and where are we in terms of efforts to recharge Lake Chad. Now, it's Good Morning Nigeria, second edition for the week. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program.
And I'm Jumo Yusuf. Thanks so much for joining us. We're reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and from the nation's capital, Abuja.
All right. In the course of the program, we also have our complimentary segments, and this, of course, will include newspaper review and business. For now, let's join our colleague, Usman Aliu, for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Usman.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Here is the news highlight. The Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has appealed to Nigerians to promptly report cases of rape and gender-based violence in the country as part of their contributions towards putting an end to the dreaded scourge. This was while addressing newsmen after being summoned by President Muhammadu Buhari over the worrisome situation across the country.
Just to tell you that government is doing something seriously to curtail this type of offense. I will call on every Nigerian that has or comes across any victim of sexual offenses, of rape, or gender-based violence to quickly report to law enforcement agents, because keeping it without reporting it will give room for the perpetrators to continue to commit the offenses.
The Nigerian Army Court-Martial, headed by the Chief of Training and Operations, Lieutenant General Lamido Adeosun, has pronounced former GOC 8th Division Nigerian Army Sokoto Major General Hakim Otiki guilty of 5-count charges punishable under Section 66A of the Armed Forces Act laws of the Federation. Francis Form reports that the sentence is subject to confirmation by the authority.
Sentence for Count 4 is severe reprimand. Count 5, 2 years loss of seniority on the rank of Major General. Count 3, reduction to the rank of Brigadier General with 2 years seniority on the rank. Count 2, sentence, dismissal with disgrace and dishonor.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has reported 573 new cases of COVID-19 at about midnight of 15 June 2020. The breakdown of the figures shows that Lagos State has 216 new cases, Rivers has 103, Oyo 68, Edo 40, Kano 21, Gombe has 20, while the FCT has 17 new cases. Others are Delta 13, Plateau and Bauchi states have 12 each. Niger has 10, Kebbi 9, Ogun and Ondo 8 each. Abia State has 7, Nasarawa 5, Borno, Kwara, Benue and Anambra states have 1 new case each. As at now, Nigeria recorded 16,658 cases of COVID-19, with 5,349 of them discharged, while 424 patients died. And now the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has warned state governments against reopening schools, contrary to its guidelines, saying it will be premature to do so amidst the raging COVID-19 pandemic. Chairman of the task force, Boss Mustafa, who gave the warning in Abuja at Monday's briefing, urged Nigerians to henceforth consider themselves as frontliners in the fight against COVID-19.
Lifted restrictions does not mean carelessness and that life is back to normal. We have received reports that some states are contemplating the opening of schools, television viewing centers, sports stadiums, and other places where large gatherings could take place. The Presidential Task Force reemphasizes that it is not yet safe to do so.
The Senate is worried that after the privatization of the power sector, the federal government still spends huge sums of money on the private entities. This was the reaction of the Senate Committee on Power to the presentation by the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, on the power sector recovery plan.
The first part of the PSRP has recently been negotiated and expected to commence implementation once all necessary negotiations and procedures have been met.
And therefore, we were privatized. The only thing we owe to these privatized public enterprises will be whatever we sign in the share purchase agreement. Nothing more.
Towards ensuring effective implementation of policies for the development of Lake Chad region, the National Steering Committee has been inaugurated by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk. This committee is for the restructuring of the multisectoral crisis recovery project, which is being overseen by the Northeast Development Commission.
The MCRP PROLAC AF was approved by the World Bank Board on the 26th of May 2020 as an additional financing for MCRP to the tune of $176 million, bringing the project portfolio to $376 million. The MCRP PROLAC will make great strides towards achieving its objectives.
More than 500 illegal miners had been arrested by the Special Mines Surveillance Task Force of the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development for illegal mining operations in Ondo State. The site was discovered at Ileoluji in Okebo local government area of the state.
Well, anybody that wants to go into mining, they know that it must be backed by due process. So, as I speak with you now, I don't think this is due process driven.
And that's the morning news. The Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Jumai after the break. Stay with us.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6-foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus dome our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. Nigerians, let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obechi when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Federal government receives more than 1.6 billion naira as support fund for COVID-19 containment as sub-national governments enjoin to invest more in agriculture to mitigate effects of COVID-19. Let's join Kunle Adeye for details.
The federal government has disclosed that a total of 1.689 billion naira was the total amount received as donations to eradicate COVID-19 between April 1 and May 31, 2020. This is contained in a public notice by the Accountant General of the Federation, which contains every detail regarding the donations. In another development, economies globally are just bouncing back following the outbreak of COVID-19, which the World Health Organization labeled a global pandemic. With restrictions everywhere and loss of jobs, various sectors of the economy were weakened. Nigeria also shared in the spoil that took the whole world by storm, as the 2020 budget had to be reviewed following the fall in the global oil price. As the economic environment in Nigeria is now picking up, an agriculturist, Professor Olu Makinde, emphasized that agriculture can conveniently revive the economy by gainfully engaging the populace.
I will advise that money is made available in quantum to our farmers. And after you make this money available, you should look towards building in every state. Every governor should build to have a food bank. Just like you go to your bank, you have a reserve there. If you don't have any reserve in your account, you can't withdraw food. You can't withdraw money. Then that means that in any of these Federal Ministry of Agriculture, State Ministry of Agriculture, they should have a very well-financed food bank.
And next are the details of Monday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeye, for the business package. Coming up next is newspaper review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Chiobi, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jumai.
Good to have
Good
you
morning.
us.
Good morning, Kinsley.
Hi, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
That's right. Come on, let's begin with you.
Okay, we begin with the Punch newspaper this morning, and just above the masthead, FG refineries earn 3.45 billion naira. NAPIMS makes 1.2 trillion NMPC. That's coming from the NMPC. You find that story on page 10. Don't open schools, viewing centers, stadiums now, FG1 states. Find that story on page 2. Nigeria recorded 717 rape incidents in 5 months. That's coming from the Inspector General of Police. Find that story on page 10. Wadume, Falana gives Malami 7-day ultimatum to try alleged killer soldiers. Find that story on page 9. Just below the masthead, Obaseki National Working Committee visits Aso Rock to counter APC governor's moves. We find that story on page 214 and 34. And they have riders. Oshomole-led committee presents certificates to nail Edo governor. Governor will soon join us. Won't get automatic ticket. State PDP. Disqualification saga. APC has killed Nigerian Governors Forum since 2015. That's coming from Wiki. And the picture story there, officials of NEMA and Borno State government during the distribution of COVID-19 palliatives provided by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development in Chibok local government area, Borno State on Monday. You can see the pictures there of the distribution. Villa shooting, Aisha's ADC, escort commander, riot policemen released. Find that story on page 10. Emeritus Professor of Medicine Akinkube passes on at 86. That story is on page 34. Man arrested for raping, killing brother's wife in Zamfara. You find that story on page 5. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, 5 million bounty placed on Katsina attacks mastermind declared wanted. That story is on page 9. Naira Mali, federal government grounds executive jet, sanctions airline pilot. You find that story on page 4 and 5. I have no regret deposing Sanusi as emir. It's attributed to the governor of Kano State, Umar Ganduje.
All right. We also took a look at the Nation newspaper. A paper above the nameplate says Labour seeks tax cut and interest rate reduction. With rider experts oppose demand. Details can be found inside at page 25. The Naira Mali story is also there, but there's an indication with the rider that the flight that Naira Mali used into Abuja was approved for a judge. That's on page 6 in greater detail. Shock as Lagos Senator Oshinowo dies at 64. Buhari and Tinubu mourn. Below the nameplate, eminent scholar Professor Akinkube dies at 86, and 799, just one short of 800, in police net for rape, says Inspector General of Police. COVID-19, that's the lead story. Government to Nigerians, battle against virus in your hands. People's attitude, cause of rising positive cases, and reopening of schools and viewing centers dangerous. Resident doctors on strike over unpaid allowances. And you have a raft of riders inside the paper. That's to say that more of the stories can be found on pages 6 and 31. Federal government rakes in 1.6 billion naira to tackle virus. And why frontline health workers have not been paid, that's attributed to the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. Patients without symptoms can transmit virus, according to WHO. And airlifting of stranded Nigerians to end next month. And then you see the numbers there in terms of global infections and fatalities. Well over 8 million persons have been infected, and we have had over 430,000 persons dead. But over 4 million persons have also recovered. In Nigeria, the figure now is well over 16,600, and 424 persons have died. Active cases, about 10,885. Now, just below the photograph, and by the way, that photograph is a scene in London, and it says shoppers struggling to enter a store in Oxford Circus, that's in central London, against the coronavirus protocol of social distancing. That was yesterday. And secondly, story on the front page there, which is below the photograph, Obasanjo's disqualification final, says Oshomole. And Villa Pale can't save governor, that's one writer. Another says Wike and Clark, that's Ike Clark, back his, that's Obasanjo's PDP's move, is moved to PDP. That's on page 25. Southern Kaduna seeks UN protection, page 26. And Bagudu to pursue all-inclusive growth, also on page 26. Bayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with the notification given by the the executive of the Nigerian Medical Association, especially the resident doctors. They began an indefinite strike yesterday. However, they were magnanimous in saying that doctors who are treating patients in isolation centers are exempted for now. But it will not be for too long. If within 2 weeks their issues are not resolved, those ones will down tools. However, the University of Port Harcourt Resident Doctors Association have announced their withdrawal from the strike. They say that this is to provide care for patients in COVID-19. The chief medical director of that facility says that he has praised the judgment of the personnel in his own environment, says the strikes are not what doctors are known for. He stressed that they should always endeavor to put people first. It may be recalled that the Minister of Labour had announced a revised hazard allowance for doctors. However, the doctors, according to their demand, they are calling for implementation of Medical Residency Act, payment of parity among doctors for equal care, as well as implementation of hazard allowance agreed 3 months ago. Meanwhile, talking about sanctions, Executive Jet has been sanctioned for ferrying an artist from Lagos to Abuja and taking him back. actually the Minister of Aviation indicated that the approval for that flight was for a judge to travel from Lagos to Abuja, and the date for travel was June 14th. However, the flight took off on June 13th and also ferried to Abuja an artist. Meanwhile, the pilot was also to be sanctioned for giving wrong information to the control tower. Oyo State government has announced yesterday the resumption of classes from Monday, June the 29th. This is for what has been described as the eminent students, those who are due to sit exams. They include those in primary 6, JSS 3 and SS 3, and these are described as critical students who are on the exit, particularly that they will be sitting their exams. There are, however, protocols that have been emphasized by the Oyo State government to be observed for this duration of the opening. Oyo State government has also indicated that other categories of workers will resume on June 22nd. Meanwhile, they will continue to monitor the opening of schools, and if everything goes well, they will also consider opening the rest of the school. However, if there are incidences of increase in infections, the tendency will be that they will revert to shutting down. Meanwhile, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has advised that this is not the right time to start opening schools. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force and Secretary to the Government of Administration has advised that at the briefing on Monday that he enjoins state government to be careful about reopening schools. Already, Kano reopened football viewing centers, and Cross River State is also planning to reopen schools. The Presidential Task Force says it is not yet safe to do so. Meanwhile, the PUTF says that it is monitoring indications that Nigerians are not observing social distancing, and it is very worrying because unless we observe these protocols, the tendency is that we risk increases in the number of COVID cases. From the briefing, daily briefing, the Minister of Health also gave a perspective, and he said that patients who are COVID-19 positive tend to treat themselves at home. It is when it is too late that they resort to coming to hospital. Most of them eventually die at the hospital entrance. So COVID-19 is not a death sentence. So the earlier you attempt to treatment, the higher the chances of getting cure. The Director General of the Presidential Task Force also gave indications that donations towards COVID-19 so far has reached 850 million. Those are the so far stories relating to COVID-19. The area of concern and we need to worry about is the case of rape cases, yes. The Inspector General of Police has indicated that already between January and May this year, we had as many as 717 cases. However, the good news is that 631 cases are already in court. And you know severally, it has been identified here on this program that the challenges for rape relate to non-diligent prosecution and also provision of evidence. Exactly. And the Inspector General of Police has emphasized that to always, please don't hide cases, report to the police. But in this occasion, I think the best approach would be that the first point of call for a rape victim should be a medical facility, hospital, yeah. So that the evidence will be provided before they go to the police. Most often than not, when they go to the police, the victims are double embarrassed because they have themselves violated and they are asked questions which are probing, which they feel very uncomfortable.
Traumatic
yes, but by the time they go to the hospital first, the evidence is medical report, the evidence is available, then the police can also continue with that police. That will make it easier for the victims.
I would imagine that the numbers that have been reported here, that's just one shot of 800, and the procedure that you've talked about, which the police often would require relatives and then the victims of rape to do. These are figures perhaps that are reported in urban areas. Now, what is happening in rural areas? There are daily reports of women who are being raped on their farms, and some of them are being murdered, and there are no indications of persons being arrested and being prosecuted for these issues. Now, in some remote villages, where are you going to have the opportunity of following all of these protocols?
They don't even report it because of the
numbers,
stigma.
yes, and the numbers are increasing, on a daily basis. farmlands are being invaded and women are being abducted and raped and maimed or otherwise killed. So where are those? Do we have those numbers? You know, as part of, I'm sure that if you were to add those numbers, they will run into their thousands.
I think one of the areas we have to look at is some of these people who sell aphrodisiacs around. There's a lot of aphrodisiac sales around. Some concoction and others in tablets. And these, unless these are brought under control, you find so many people whose mental control is poor and have taken drugs that unfortunately get them unnecessarily excited. That is an aspect too that has to be looked into.
Yeah, and just before you take the editorial, there's a request here. And by the way, I think we should applaud the federal government for what they have done with regard to the airline, you know, that misled the traffic control tower with regard to the purpose of the flight, and then the necessary steps to follow. Labour is seeking tax cut and interest rate reduction as part of the measures to cushion the effect of COVID-19. Yeah, probably the era of palliatives is gone now. So, but there are tougher issues. I mean, businesses have been on lockdown, and businesses are going to suffer going forward. Are you going to require them to pay, you know, all the levies and taxes and rates that they ordinarily will pay as if at the times were normal? You know, what kind of concessions can you give? To whom will you give concessions? Businesses that haven't operated, they have rent obligations to make. You know, so how do you get them over that? Yes.
I think not too long ago, there were indications that some moratorium will be provided for periods of 2, 3, 4, up to 6 months. And it's a balancing act because government itself is the series of revenue to be able to meet its budget obligations. So it needs revenue. And these tax holidays and rebates are also part of the revenue that government will require. So it's a critical balancing act, but it's a point that is worth of noting. Moratoriums will be the way out.
All right, Bayo, we'll skip the editorial today and see you tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you for being around. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our discussion segment.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects 2 persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the 2 persons have affected 4, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
With the Premier League's Project Restart in full swing, Arsenal will be hoping for a restart of their own as they try to push for a European spot when they take on Brighton. Watch Brighton versus Arsenal on Premier League Live this Saturday from 2:30 p.m. on NTA and NTA Sports. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Access Bank and Babai Jebu.
Shegun. How far shey tomorrow still dey on?
What's your tomorrow?
Community meeting now.
You know they hear Abi?
Na begi. See, if we meet for my house, inside parlor, then go know.
This COVID-19 is not a child's play.
If we want to elect a new secretary, we fit to do one for WhatsApp or for Skype or even on Zoom.
Or we just wait.
I will not negotiate
this social distancing. It is non-negotiable.
Not every infected person shows symptoms, but every infected person is contagious. Avoid large gatherings and self-isolate if you think you might have come in contact with a carrier. Your safety and the safety of others is in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly. or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
There is a lot of fake news and report circulating, especially on social media, on the coronavirus. Do not believe or partake in the spread of these fake reports. If it is not on the official website or news from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, disregard such report. Only together can we beat this virus. Only together can we overcome this pandemic. Follow the instructions and guidelines provided to combat this virus. Most importantly, stay at home. Self-isolate, regardless of your status. The virus doesn't move unless we move. Let us work together to better Nigeria. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Welcome back. Environment is critical to the life of living beings, and hence the attention given to the sector to make life more meaningful for the people. Abdusalam Jibrin gives us a rundown of some of the success story in the environment sector in the last 5 years of the Buhari administration.
The environment plays a vital role to a nation's development, and if a nation's environmental foundations are depleted, its economy may well decline, its social fabric may deteriorate, and its political structure may even become destabilized. With this in mind, the Muhammadu Buhari administration, since assuming office 5 years ago, has no doubt given the environment sector the much-needed attention. So far, some successes have been recorded in the sector, amongst of which is the Ogoni cleanup in the Niger Delta region, which is ongoing. A total of 21 contractors are currently engaged at different levels of remediation works on 21 lots across the 4 local government areas of Eleme, Gokana, Kanut, erosion and flood control.